How many times do you look at your phone screen throughout the day? In a recent study done by Jean Twange on what might explain the unhappiness epidemic, it shows that rates of unhappiness among teens began to increase in 2012, which is the first year in which the majority of Americans owned a smartphone. Within the recent years, smartphones have become more advanced than we can imagine. It's our responsibility to be conscious of how we often use our smartphones. We are constantly busy and don't stop and notice how fast everything around us actually is going. Being busy all the time may stop us from realizing how much we actually depend on our smartphones to help us with our everyday lives. It's important to understand the impact that our smartphone has on us because depending on how we use it, then there can be consequences. It's important to recognize how much power our smartphones are capable of and how to be responsible with it. I've been doing my research and I have found a variety of examples that show how smartphones have impacted us. I use my phone for just about everything, and I've never noticed how much I use my phone until an update on my phone actually started showing me how much time I spent on it. Learning how smartphones have affected us will better help us understand our responsibility with our smartphones. First, I will share how smartphones started to have an impact on our everyday lives. Then I will share how smartphones have benefited our way of living. And lastly, we will learn how smartphones have negatively impacted us. First, we will see how smartphones have impacted our lives. As we all know, smartphones have been around for a short while. Technically, the first smartphone was known as a Simon Personal Communicator, and it's made its debut in 1994. Since then, smartphones have come a long way. So what makes a cell phone a smartphone? The main elements include having the ability to connect to an email, having access to notes and calendars, being able to connect to the internet, and being able to download apps and widgets. Smartphones have recently started to become more dependent since now people do everything on their phones. There's no need for agendas or notepads to keep track of your daily life. If you think about it, a smartphone has the ability to do almost anything an assistant can do. Smartphones eliminate the process of using individual products for your everyday use. For example, there's no need for an alarm clock, a paper for your grocery list, a contact book, a timer. You can even place online orders for groceries to be delivered to you. Smartphones have made the way of living easier than what it was before. It has allowed humans to continue to live in a fast-paced environment while the phone does all the work for you. Now that we've learned how smartphones have impacted our lives, let's look at how smartphones have benefited us. The advancement of smartphones have positively impacted the everyday lives of people. We're used to having smartphones accessible all the time, so people don't notice how impactful smartphones really are. Besides being compact and physically accessible to everyone, smartphones have the ability to connect you with just about anyone. In the article, Smartphone, But Where's the Big Idea? Timothy Egan says it's best when explaining on how the iPhone changed everything by putting the world's recorded knowledge in the palm of a hand. It revolutionized work, dining, travel, and socializing. Smartphones have revolutionized the way we live and help us keep up with the advancements of society. We've seen how smartphones have helped everyday lives, but smartphones have become a necessity for some people. In a document for people with disabilities, smartphone use may be a matter of survival, not addiction. Jamison Hill talks about how he needs his smartphone to stay alive. Hill deals with the multi-system disease that impairs the body's metabolic features and relies on his smartphone to communicate with his caregiver and his family since he physically can't. The smartphone isn't only available to support our materialistic wants, but smartphones have allowed the ability for the disabled to live an easier life. We've learned the beginning of how smartphones started to impact our lives, how many people have benefited from smartphones, but now we will explore the consequences of relying on our smartphones. Although our phones have benefited us in many ways, the smartphone has caused a barrier between people and the real world. Smartphones let us grocery shop without having to physically talk to one, for example. There's an app called Instacart that allows you to order all your groceries online and someone will bring them to your doorstep. The applications on the smartphone create a barrier and have created younger generations to have trouble coping with society. Not only are the applications on the phones causing a barrier between younger generations and society, but social media on the smartphones have caused an obsession to their phones. Besides being dependent on social media, having easy access to the internet has caused the younger generations to be dependent on the internet for answers. Instead of doing the critical thinking on their own, kids are choosing the easy path. In the article, Help My Smartphone Is Making Me Dumb, or Maybe Not, Brian Chen explains how research has shown that we've been excluding ourselves from socialization. The study done proves how smartphones have contributed to the failing social skills of the younger generations. With all this information provided, we have learned the benefits and the social barriers that the smartphones have created. We've learned how smartphones benefited us from early on, the benefits of owning a smartphone, and the consequences that smartphones have brought us. Even though we don't realize it, we rely on our smartphones for our everyday use. Now that we are aware of the effects that our smartphones have on us, we can be more conscious and responsible of how often we use our smartphones. I know this is really bad, so bear with me. Thanks.